What's going on, guys? It's your boy the Markham Knight here. Today's video is going to be all about the Justice League box office numbers and about the Justice League reviews, both of which are very poor. Now I'm going to go ahead and speak to you as to why this is. I'm going to start with the box office. Number one thing I feel like kind of held it back a little bit was the marketing. You need to emphasize Batman. Batman is Justice League's #1 seller. Everybody knows that Batman sells. The Dark Knight movies, both the Dark Knight movies made $1 billion. Batman Begins didn't make as much because that's kind of was his coming out party. But definitely you needed to emphasize Batman in the marketing. There's something that people have been complaining about that I don't necessarily agree with, because when it was happening, we were kind of complimenting them on it. They were talking about Superman needs to be in the marketing. Now, 100% if Superman was supposed to be alive for this movie prior to if Batman vs Superman ended with Superman alive, yes, you emphasize Superman front and center and you bring him up in everything. But because he was dead, if you have watched the movie, you know that they can't really show anything from the movie that Superman basically did in the marketing campaign, which wouldn't really give spoilers away. And that was something that we were complimenting a lot, saying we don't want a doomsday situation, don't show Superman, don't show Superman. And now that the box office numbers were weak, everyone's complaining about, oh, you should have showed Superman. Superman needed to be in it. Superman is maybe the most popular character if we're talking about worldwide. Batman is definitely North America #1 seller. Worldwide, it's probably Superman. Everyone kind of knows that S symbol everywhere. Another thing that they could have done with the marketing was emphasize more on Wonder Woman and ride basically the reviews and everything that Wonder Woman the movie kind of had and every success that she had there, and emphasize Batman and Wonder Woman. I think that's kind of what they should have done with the marketing. Otherwise, next thing I wanted to talk about was timing of when this came out. This came out just 2 weeks after Thor Ragnarok, which was really well received, and because it's a Marvel movie, you know it's going to make crazy amounts of dollars, and it did. It still made $21 million this year. That $21 million could have been Justice League's $21 million if Thor Ragnarok was no longer in theaters, or at least was like 6 weeks out or something like that. But that $21 million definitely ate up maybe $21 million straight out of the $96 million that Justice League made this. Because if they take that $21 million away, that's $117 million that Justice League could have potentially made, and that $21 million went straight to Thor Ragnarok. It's definitely not the best timing because Star Wars is also coming out in another few weeks, so it's not going to make crazy money, and don't expect that. Another thing I wanted to talk about were parents. Parents did not want to take their kids to these movies because they don't trust the DC cinematic universe. The DC movies, I spoke to a parent actually when I was at a corporate party, and I was telling the kid who didn't know, the mom didn't know who Cyborg was, and I said, oh, watch the Justice League movie and you'll figure out who Cyborg is. And she said, no, I won't take my 4-year-old to a Justice League movie. They're definitely too old for that. She expects to take them to Marvel movies and stuff, but thinks DC is kind of for an older audience, and I think that holds back a lot of parents from taking their kids there, and that holds back the box office if there aren't going to be parents taking their kids there, because that should be a huge demographic for them. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the idea that it'd be a little bit older, but I did watch Justice League, and I do think kids could have definitely watched that movie. It was not nearly as bad as that parent was making it out to be. I'm just not in the business of telling parents how to raise their children, so I didn't really want to say anything to her, but definitely, if you want to take your kids to this movie, you can easily take your kids to this movie. There's just as much violence in Thor Ragnarok, just as much killing and all sorts of stuff going on. Next thing that might have held it back was Ben Affleck saying he's gonna leave. Ben Affleck said he wants to find a cool way to segue out of this story. So that's very interesting because it was just legit a week or two before Justice League came out, so there was a lot of talk surrounding this of whether or not Ben Affleck's even going to stay as Batman. So is it worth it if they think that they're going to reboot the universe or kick Batman out somehow to watch a Justice League movie? There was a lot of controversy there. Next thing I wanted to talk about was the critic reviews. This also held them back because Rotten Tomatoes held back the score until the last day or something, and that became news onto its own, saying, oh, if they're holding it back, this is probably because the movie wasn't very good and the critic reviews are going to be bad. And when the reviews did come out, it came out at about 42% or something like that. It was very low, and people already said, oh, you know what, it's probably not going to be good. They're already looking for the flaws in it that basically they hadn't even seen yet. So they're going into the movie looking for the things that the critics were talking about. about that they didn't like about the movie. What didn't the critics not like about the movie? Basically, they said there was bad CGI, said there was too much CGI too. Big controversy was about Superman's mustache. I'll be completely honest with you, I've watched this 4 different times already. I watched it with my family, I watched it with friends and stuff. People who had no idea that Superman's mustache was there or even a concern, who did not even notice it, did not notice any bad CGI or anything. But if you read a review beforehand and you've heard something like that, you're going to be looking for it. So seeing that, I had a friend who basically, they're saying stuff like, oh, the CGI is bad. I had a friend who watched the movie, loved the movie, and then 2 days later when I was talking to him about it, said, oh, well, you know what, the CGI wasn't so great. And this is a guy who's never mentioned CGI when criticizing a movie in his lifetime, but you could tell he had read a review or two, and it started to turn his opinion on the movie itself. Even though he says he enjoyed the movie, he's like, you know what, but the CGI wasn't great. So I did notice that, and he didn't really notice that because I was there with him when he watched the movie and all that stuff. And that's basically letting the bandwagon opinion kind of sway you. Basically whatever the group is saying, you're going to jump onto that and you're going to be like, yes, I agree with that. This is something that I want to be a part of too. I want to be in the in crowd. And that's basically what people were doing with the critic reviews. They said stuff like the plot was too simple, not something that you need to understand. In a movie like this where you're introducing a bunch of new characters, you can't have a crazy plot that's Batman vs. Superman had a very intense and complicated plot. This had a very simple plot because the main point was to get you excited for these characters, which I think it did a very good job of. Avengers had a simple plot as well, and people complained about the final fight scene ending too quickly. Avengers, in the final fight scene, Hulk crushed Loki, hitting him side to side without even trying, and basically the whole storyline was to try and close the portal. So it wasn't necessarily that part of it. This is kind of like directly similar to that. Avengers Age of Ultron, the fight scene ended in like 2 seconds, where Thor, Vision and Captain America worked together to basically attack Ultron and finish them off like 2 seconds, and all the other side guys died just like that. So saying it's a weak plot or there's something like that, it feels like it's a big thing with team-up superhero movies. It's usually not an amazing plot. Even Civil War, what started as a great plot, because if you look at the comic books, it was supposed to be all about this Superhero Registration Act. They delved away from that and went to Iron Man's mom dying, and they changed that storyline and made it all about that, which I didn't like at all. But definitely the plot is not always, it's not the strongest, and it's not the most complicated. It's a simple plot, and that I feel like is the main point, is to try and get the characters across more than anything else. And people said it jumped from scene to scene a lot. I can agree with that a little bit, but with this many characters, trying to get everyone to have their own character moment, that was something that Avengers really struggled with every time they've done it. Same with Civil War, not every character got their due. In this movie, it didn't seem like any character was overshadowed too much by the other ones. Everyone had their moment in the sun, and that was a good thing. They did jump from scene to scene. I do feel like that's because there was a 2-hour limit on it. If there is an extended edition, I do want to see that, and I feel like that's not going to jump as much. It's going to have some better transitions. Now, the silver lining that I want to talk about here, Aquaman is over a year away. So that's going to make a lot of comic book fans very, very thirsty to know what these stories are about and what's going on with Aquaman, because that was someone that everyone was very, very excited for, to see what happened, and he was really cool in this movie. So they really want to see that, and I feel like James Wan is going to do a great job with this movie. He does have a great track record. That's something people are excited for. People are excited for solo movies for every single one of these characters, including Superman, Wonder Woman, even ones that haven't been announced. They'd be excited for a Man of Steel 2, based on what Superman was doing in this movie. They'd be excited for the Batman movie. They'll be excited for the Wonder Woman 2. They'll be excited for Aquaman next year, and they'll be excited, I'm most excited maybe, for the Flash's movie Flashpoint. They set up Flashpoint in this movie. I'm not going to tell you how. I'll wait for the spoilers to do that one, but they set up Flashpoint in this movie, and Flashpoint, for those of you who don't know, it can change the entire universe. So if Ben Affleck does really want out, they can definitely get him out that how. So there's a silver lining. They can change what that doesn't work. They can keep what works. So definitely there is a silver lining to all this. Box office and critic reviews have not been great. Aquaman is up next. It's December 2018 that it's coming out, so it's definitely going to get people excited by the time that starts to roll around. Otherwise, tell me what you guys think.
This is the Markham Knight, and I need you to like, comment, and subscribe.